Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers and this is Andy255, and we are working on our rain simulation. So you should have something modeled for this unless you're just doing the straight simulation. Again, if you're just doing the straight simulation, you're going to need to have a ground plane and a cloud plane. Okay, so both of these, this one's just a cube, this one's, so if you're going to do straight simulation, then you'll get 90%. So that would be an A still. And then if you go above and beyond and model the rest of the scene, either like what I have it or very similar, you will get, depending on how your simulation looks, you can get up to 100%. Okay? Alright, so just so you understand how that all works. So let's go ahead and get started. What we need to do is we need to make sure we delete all the history and freeze the transformations. So I'm going to go Control A so I can see the channel editor, and we're going to go ahead and select everything and then go click on delete history and then freeze transformations. Okay, this is essential when you do any kind of simulations. This kind of clears out your modeling errors and just kind of tightens things up and cleans the history out so your simulation will run as fast as possible. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a couple of things in the preferences. So you can go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, or we can go down here with the icon down at the lower right hand corner, a guy running away from a gear. Go ahead and click on that, and we're going to make sure that our time slider is set to play every frame for playback speed, and then max playback speed at 24 frames times 1. So the first one is play every frame, and the second one is 24 frames per second times 1. Okay, so click on save. You have to click on save for it to actually work or set it up. And the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make sure that we're going to create this object as an emitter. So the first thing we're going to do is select it, hold down the space bar, and I'm going to have you go to Hotbox Controls, go to Show FX, and click FX Only. Okay? When you do that, then you'll get this when you hold your space bar down. Okay? So when you hold the space bar down, you can just say in this row right here we've got all of our VFX. Okay? So if I go under end particles, you can see we've got the end particles start up here. We're not going to use those right now. Again, we're going to get into those later. So what we have to do is go to Legacy Particles, and we're going to create the Legacy Particles. We're going to create from object. So we're going to emit from object. Okay. So emit from object. Okay, just like we did with our snow simulation, emit from object. Go ahead and click on the option box, and we're going to make sure we select emitter type as surface. And we're going to just basically keep it the default settings and click on create. Alright, so when we play the animation, you'll see that we've got particles that are simulating up. Okay, so this isn't really a problem. We could just rotate this. Now if I go into my outliner, which I need to have open, so go ahead and go to Windows and then outliner, and just kind of place that over here, and we're going to thin that out a little bit if I can. I don't know if it'll make it any smaller. Nope, that's about as small as it's going to go. Hit the plus sign next to the plane where it says plane. Okay, and here you'll see that there is the emitter. Okay, now in here, if we click on the emitter, we can hold down the space bar and excuse me, not space bar, go to Control A, and we can go to emitter, and you can see down here we have the emitter open. Click on the plane. Okay, emitter. Alright. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and rotate that because we want the particles to fall down. Okay, so right now everything's grayed out here on the axis because it's a volume. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and rotate this, right? Just rotate it around like that. And I'm going to go Control A, and we're going to do -180, so just -180 will be fine. And so now we're going to go in here and play it, and you can see that now the particles are being sprayed out in the direction that they were created. Okay, so it's always going to follow the face, the normal of that object. So there it is. So we've got that falling, which is great. So we know it's working. So the emitter now, we've got okay, we're okay with it right now. So what we want to do is we want the particles fall down, so we need to add a gravity. So click on the particles here, okay, and we're going to hold down the space bar, and we're going to go to fields and solvers, and we're going to go into gravity, just like we did with the snow. We want the gravity to pull it down in the negative y direction, -1, and click create. So now when I play the simulation, we can see that the particles are being pulled down. Now, the biggest issue I have with this is that it's not falling as fast as rain falls. Now we've got everything set up properly, 24 frames per second, but the problem is that we've got an issue with speed. Okay, all right, so what is the speed? So let's go back into, click on the emitter. Let's go to Control A. We're going to be going in and out of all these our attributes, so just try to hang in there with me. So emitter, let's go up first. So we got the particles. Let's see if we can add more. So add a 0, so we can go from 100 to 1,000. So when we play this now, we'll have a lot more particles to see. There we go. So that looks good. So with that done, we're going to go ahead and scroll down to speed. Okay. Now, how do we know how fast these particles should go? Well, that's a good question. So I actually went online, believe it or not, and typed in how fast does rain fall? Okay. Now I got an answer. Now it did tell me that depending on the size of the rain, that it falls about the average of 14 miles per hour. So, and then I had to figure out 14 miles an hour, then how many feet per second is that? So that comes out to be around 20 point something feet per second. So let's just say 20 feet per second. That's pretty amazing. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, so that's from 2,500 feet. So that there's lots of variables there they have to figure out, but it's about 14 miles per hour. So I thought that was pretty cool. So now I've got I know how fast this has to fall. So what I did was, and this was just by accident, that the height of my building is 20 feet. Just happens to be about 20 feet. Pretty close to it. So if we are at 24 frames per second, then I would just count when it hits the ground 1/1001. So it's not fast enough. Okay. So if I 1/1001, so I have to stop it, and it gets about halfway. So 1/1001, so it's about that far. It's not quite enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the emitter, and we're going to go scroll down to speed. Okay. So I'm scrolling down to speed, and what I figured out is pretty close is 20. I'm going to turn the speed up to 20. So now I'm going to go 1,001. That's perfect. So it's really, 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 really close. 1,001. So I'm looking at the particles at the top. When it goes past this, I start counting. So 1,001. So 1,001. So it has to fall about that fast, and that's 20 feet per second. So that's 14 miles an hour. Pretty cool. So that is correct, or about as close as we can get. So that's about how fast rain falls. Okay. So we got that, and now we're going to do what does the rain look like? So we need to kind of go with how rain looks, if they're not perfect little circles. Now, the thing is, drops look like that if you were to freeze frame them, but the thing is, what we see is a motion blur because they're moving too fast in front of us. So what we're going to do is we're going to simulate that motion blur. We're not going to render these out, so we don't want them to be physical. And that's the problem with using Arnold. and then motion blur. It has to be an actual object in Maya for that motion blur to work. So we're not going to render this out. We're just going to playblast everything. We may render some stuff, but we're going to try to remember that everybody's resources are different. So we're going to go to particle shape this time. This is basically particle shape is what the particles look like. So let's go to the top, and the first thing we're going to do is change not only the look at the particles but how long they live. Okay, so right now we have it living forever, and we don't really want that to happen, okay, because that can really clog us up if we really want a heavy rainfall. So what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is fix the lifespan modes. We're going to go in here and change it to random range. And in random range, we're going to go ahead and change the lifespan. We're going to keep it at 1. We might have to go a little bit longer. Let's go 1.2. Because we know the rainfall is about 1 second, which is 24 frames. Let's go 1.5. Give it a little time here. Random range at 0.5. So we're going to kill those off at a random range so they look a little nicer, a little more realistic. Okay, so now we're killing them off right there. Now we could change that and make it a little more accurate. Let's go 1.2. That's what I thought they should have been in the first place, but I decided not. Yeah, there we go. That's better. So there we go. So now we can add more particles if we want to, without slowing our system down. Okay, by changing and making the lifespan not go any farther than it needs to be. All right, so go ahead and go back. So with that done, again, lifespan random range, lifespan at 1.2, and lifespan random at 0.5. Okay, we're under the particle shape. Okay, if we scroll down a little bit more, now we can get into the render attributes. Now the points really aren't cutting it for me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the arrow and go down to streak. When I click on streak, I'm going to go to render type. Okay, this gives us the chance to go ahead and change the tail size and all that stuff. Now let's go ahead and play the simulation. And I think the raindrops are the motion blur is too much. You may disagree, but some of you may like that. But I'm going to change this tail size to 0.5. Okay, because we're gonna add a lot more particles to this. So I think not having a long streak is probably a good idea right now. So I'm going to go ahead, and we can always change that later. Okay, there we go. So there's the particles. That looks pretty good. Okay. So what we're going to do is make these particles a little heavy, and so let's go ahead, I think at this point, let's go ahead and change the color, okay, so we can see it a little bit better. So let's go ahead and scroll down here to the very bottom, okay, and when we add color to particles, it's a little different than right-clicking over an object and adding a shader to it, like a Lambert or a Blinn or an Arnold shader. Or a V-Ray shader. It's different. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on, under Add Dynamic Attributes, we're going to click on Color. What that's going to do, under the Per Particle Array Attributes, it's going to add another, it's going to add an RGB per particle, which is PP. So RGB PP will be in here somewhere. So click on Color, okay, and in here we're going to click on Add Per Particle Attribute. Okay, we're going to add that attribute, click on Add Attribute, and it turns black. Alright, so that's not good. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on writing an RGPP, which was added. We can right-click in here, right-click, and click on Create Ramp. Now I don't need to go in here, just click Create Ramp. You can see that we have an array mapper, basically a ramp now, to control the color of the particles. Now they turned white automatically, so which is good. So now we can see them a little bit better. But we want to turn them kind of, we know rain is clear, right? Hopefully the rain is clear. If it's yellow, that's not good. Or a different color. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and right click over it and go to Array Mapper and go to Edit Ramp. Okay? Alright, cool. So again, what I said was right-click over that and go to Edit Ramp. All right, so now we've got this. So we can get rid of the the black. We don't want black in there. And we'll just move that in, or we can just move that down, or we can go in here and click another one, create another one, and just move it to the end here like that. So now we've got these all set up. And if you click on here, that will open this up, okay? And we'll click on this, and this is the color we can change it to. So we can start with a really nice aqua, okay, first, aqua color for the rain so we can see it. Alright, and at the end here, I'm going to make it a little bit darker, so I'm going to go back to the end here and then bring this down a little bit like that. Okay, cool. So that's what mine looks like, and then we can go in here and play the animation, or excuse me, the simulation, and you can see that everything looks good. Alright, cool. We want a lot more rain, so let's go to the emitter and scroll back up, and we want to change the one into a 3. Hit enter, and so let's go ahead and go back, play the simulation. Oh yeah, nice heavy rainfall. That looks great. Perfect. Now the only problem is that when I rotate around in here, that the raindrops are going through everything. They're not really colliding with anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the simulation, scroll back, and what we're going to do is we're going to click on the particle. Okay, even though I don't see it, so I don't need to simulate it without the gravity. We've got gravity in here, but what we want to do is we want it to collide with these objects. Okay, so click on the particle. I'm going to hit the Q keys, and then I'm going to go ahead and start selecting my objects one at a time. Okay, now a lot of students ask me, why don't you just select everything? The problem with that is that sometimes Maya gets confused with the geoconnector, which is the same thing as a collision. And so I do one at a time so I don't get it messed up. Now I've had students that say mine worked fine. It's hit and miss with that. So I'd rather you do it one at a time. So I'm going to go in here into end particles, go ahead and make collide. Let's go ahead and click on this option box. So this will save us time. So what I want you to do is, I'll talk about this. Now, resilience is the bounciness of the object, how when it interacts with a surface, it will bounce. So it's set up at 1 as default. That means it's extremely bouncy. Okay, and then friction's at 0, so that means it won't hit an object and it will slide off of it like it's ice. Okay, and so the friction is at 0. So the higher resilience is how bouncy it is. Okay, and the friction at 0 means there's no friction at all. That means that the surface is like glass, or even worse, like nothing there, like space. You know, it just floats forever. So friction at 0, it just floats forever. Okay, so I want you to understand that. So we have to put a little bit on there. So 0.1 is fine. And then resilience, we want to be something like 0.5. We don't want it to be bouncy at all. We want it to bounce a little bit, but not much. Okay? So again, you can play with that. So that's what I have for my settings. And then click on Create. All right, so let's do that for all of them. Okay, so now that I have that set up, we can just easily go in here to Particle, and then Shift Select your object. So I just select the particle in here, Shift Select the object. Okay, and then I'm going to go into End Particles and make Collide. So I just click on that. Okay, so I can go in here, and now that I've done it a couple times, I can just do this, see if it works. Hold down the Shift key and just hit the G key. Okay, see it says down here, Result Particle Shape. Yep, it worked. And then click on this one, and then hit the G key. Okay, now if everything worked, that means it will put a geoconnector on all these. Okay, so there's a geoconnector 4, geoconnector 2, geoconnector 3, and a geoconnector 5. So it all worked. Okay, great. So a geoconnector basically is your collision. Okay, so it's actually seeing the collision on the object itself. Okay. Alright, so what do we get here when we actually play the animation now? We're slowly working our way. Okay. So what's happening here? What do we see? Okay, so it is working. Okay. So when we see the rain hit the this part of the object right here, it's actually hitting it and going off. Okay. So if we look at the bottom, we can see that the rain's not coming through this area right here. Okay, all right, cool. Very good. So looks looking good so far. Okay, we're not done yet though, because in this animation we have a splash that we need to recreate to make it look a little more realistic. Now I realize this does not look like photorealistic rain, but it's fun, and it shows the power of these particle systems and how you can actually do some really fun things. Now the object for this now is that we are now going to go in here and we're going to go ahead and click on the particle. So we're going to create an event editor. Okay, so when you click on the particle, we're going to go ahead and hold down the spacebar and go to End Particles. Again, we're working with legacy particles, but up in here, the editor, we're going to create a particle collision event editor. So what we want to do is the particles will hit the ground, hit the cement, and any other object that it comes in contact with, and we want it to break up into smaller particles. Okay, that'll make it look like the splash. All right, so with that, then what we're going to do is we click on the particle, go to the particle collision event editor, and you can see that we've got the particle selected. We've got selected object here. We don't need to really, it should all come up here. Now you will want to make sure that's selected all collisions. And here's the part that you need that is not defaulted right. We need to make sure that we emit. Okay, how many particles do we want? Well, we could do 4 or 5. You can choose. I'm going to do 4. And then the spread is 0.5, which is about 50 degrees. But I don't want it to be that much, so I'm going to do 0.25. Again, you can experiment with this. An inherent velocity of 1 is just fine. And we want the original particle to die, because when the particle hits the ground, the raindrop, and breaks into these little pieces, we don't want that big particle to come out, so we want it to die. Okay, so create event. There we go. And we go ahead and close this. It'll create up another particle system. Alright, so now we're going to have to, because we got 2 particle systems, we need to rename this by double-clicking on particle 1 and type in rain. Okay, and then in particle 2, just double-click on it, and you can type in splash. Okay, that way we can keep them separate. We know which one is which. The rain is done. We don't need to do anything with the rain anymore, so that's done. So what we want to do is kind of rewind it and play it again. And you can see that, oh my goodness, we got splashes for sure. So we have no gravity. That's what the problem is with that. So the original particles are dying, okay, and the splashes are coming up. All right, so click on the splash, and we want it to. We can click on the splash and add another gravity field, but why not just use the gravity field we have already set up? So I'll show you how to do that. Of course, there may be times where you want the gravity to be separate between each particle system, right? So you can do that easily by just going in here and doing the fields and then going into gravity. But this time we're going to go ahead and share the gravity field. So to do that, click on the splash, and then go up into, let's hold down the spacebar, Windows, and we want to go into relationship editors. So Windows relationship editors, and we want to go into dynamic relationships. Okay. All right. With that, we can click on splash and see how that's not highlighted. This is really easy to use. So splash, and then we can connect these two together. Now they're connected, just like that. So now when we play the animation, we get something that looks like this. Okay, cool. Alright, so what I see here, everything's looking good. The problem is they're bouncing like little balls and causing all kinds of issues and problems. They don't look like splashes to me. And they're going on forever. So we got to do the same thing we did with the others. We just can't have that. Now we got a lot of particles, probably hundreds of thousands of particles at this point. So what we need to do with that splash is click on it and go into the splash shape, and we're going to scroll up, And we are going to click on lifespan mode, and we're going to go to random range and lifespan to be something like, oh, I don't know, 0.15 maybe. Whoops, 0.15. Let's do that. I don't know. We'll have to look at it. Random range at 0.5. Okay. I didn't write these down for my other, for my finished ones, but we'll get it. Let's go ahead and play that. Okay, that looks good. Okay, I think that's pretty good. You know, is it given enough time? I don't know. Let's take a look at that. How about 0.5? Let's see what that looks like. Okay, how does it look from the side? Sometimes you look at the side view here. You know that? You know, we could do that. Alright, we'll see what happens here. Alright, between the how long they live and the lifespan and the resilience, we're going to set that up now. See how that looks, but that's looking pretty good. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and stop that, and we're going to go back. And so now we're with the splash selected. What we're going to do with this is we are going to change the geo connector. So let's go ahead and for the geo connector for that we'll have to change this, unfortunately. We want 0.05. That's what I found to be a pretty good point with that. And then a friction at it looks like I got 0.1 on friction. That's a higher amount. Let's see what that does. So 0.05 and 0.1. Okay. And 0.1 and 0.05 and then 0.05. Now, if we had more objects, like we had 1,000 objects, we wouldn't want to be doing that per object like this. But there's only 4 objects in here that I have in my scene, so I'm not too worried about having to go in and let's see, where would that be? I don't use it much. There's general editor attribute spreadsheet. So I would use the attribute spreadsheet, select all the objects into attribute spreadsheet, and then you can change those all at once. I think I've done that before, and that worked out pretty good. But we only have 4. It's not a big deal. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Oh yeah, that looks much better. Looks great. So if you want to tweak it out a little bit more, you can, and I think that looks pretty good. I think I'm pretty happy with that. The splashes aren't as noticeable, so there are some things you can do as far as the splashes go. You can make the splash shape last a little bit longer, right? So the lifespan maybe go up a little higher. I don't know. You can do 1 and see what that looks like and see if that helps. Okay. We got collision problems here. Alright, so that's what we need to do next. So the collision, let's go back. Now we don't have collision set up for the splashes, so let's do that. Select splash, select the object, and let's do particles and make collide. Okay. So when we do that, let's go ahead and set it up for the resilience to be what we had before, 0.05, and then we'll leave that there so we can do this really quickly. Create. So I'm going to click on splash, hold down the shift key and hit the G key, click on the splash, hold down the shift key, click on this object, hit the G key, and click on splash, hold down the shift key and click on the other object and hit the G key. Okay. Now what I'm doing is the G key lets me add the last option that I selected, which was the collision. So if you need to go and do these by hand, you sure can. Hold down spacebar, go to end particles, and just make collide on all those objects. You can do that too as well. So let's take a look at see what we have here now. Now it's going to be colliding, and they're going to hang on there. So the lifespan's too long now. See, that's what I missed. I missed that. So the lifespan is too long now. I think what I had before was fine, so I upped that for some crazy reason. So we need to go to the splash shape, and random range, and lifespans at 1. Let's go to back to 0.5 the way I had it before, and play it. And perfect. So yeah, that looks great. Okay. It looks just about the same as what I showed you before. Okay. So that's great. So just get your camera all set up. Something like that would be fine. So I can see the you know, the rain hitting your eaves and running off of that, and then the rain hitting the cement and the sidewalks. So that's it. So all we have to do now, let's go ahead and pause it. Now that you played the simulation, now we need to do a play blast. Make sure you save your work as you go along. I didn't save during the whole time, which is a bad example. But I've done this so long I just forget to save. But you should be saving every time you do something so you don't lose anything. So save scene as, go ahead and save your scene, and I would call it, when you save your scene or when you save anything, make sure you put your first name in front of everything that you do. So when I ask you to send your MB file in, this is what you'd be sending in, and I need your name on it. And so when you do a playblast movie, you right click over and go to playblast, and in here we want to do view, we want to turn off ornaments, and we want to do AVI, and we want to do Xvid. So what you need to do, so if you're using Windows, you need to download Xvid. It's free, it's easy to install, so all you have to do is go to Xvid. If you can't find it, you can also type in Xvid compressing or compressor or Xvid utility, but if you do Xvid, it should come right up. Go ahead and click on it, and then when you click on it, go ahead and download it for Windows. Now, I don't think it's made for Macintosh. So with Macintosh, what you can do is when you right click over this, you should see H.264. So Mac users, you can use H.264. Windows users, you can use Xvid. Now, just remember that I do want an AVI. I'm having a harder and harder time to play QuickTime movies in Windows because it's not supported anymore. So please have AVI and then Xvid or H.264. Quality at 100. We want to do it from the window. Scales at 1. Frame padding at 3. Now that's because we have 120 frames. And then remove temporary files and then save files selected. And then in here, we want to go ahead and type it in, and this is what I want you to put in your first and last name, right? So let's type in Rain. I've already done this. So click on Browse, and you would type this in, and you want to put it to your desktop so you know where it's going, and you have to rename it again, unfortunately. So there we go, and then Rain. So this is what you're going to turn in, plus your MB file. And so you save that. Okay, I'm going to type in 01, right? Because I've already done this. And then click on Play Blast. And what happens is it takes a while. It'll go through its motion, the simulation, and then Maya's putting it together in the background. So it depends on how fast your computer is, and before you can see that. Okay? All right, great. That's basically it. Now, the reason why I kept the particles, I could have easily gone in here and changed the particles to any color I want, but I want them to be white. Okay, now they could probably be a little more white than this, but I wanted to keep it something like that. If I can't see your particles, go ahead and add another ramp to the splash particles, okay, if you need to. And that's easy enough to do. You can go back into your outliner and click on splash and go into the shape and go in here to add color, and then your add per particle attribute, and then you can right click over here and go to wait a minute, that's not right. Create ramp. There we go. And then right click over that and go to edit ramp, and then you can change this to get rid of that, and that would make that white. So that now they really stick out. I don't know if I want to do that. That's pretty white. So a lot of times I'll go in here and click on that guy there and give it a little bit of color. And we don't have to give it a lot of color, but just a little color. There we go. So now you can see it doesn't start from white. Okay. Let's just go ahead and play it. There we go. That looks a little more fun, a little bit better. All right, so I can see the particles; they really stick out. Perfect, great. Well, congratulations, you finished your second simulation. And with that, make sure you turn everything in. And I will see you guys in the next module, Module 2. Congratulations, and I hope you're having fun. Particles are always a lot of fun to do and to control. And so I'm glad you're having. Hopefully you're having fun. And I'll see you guys in Module 2. Thanks a lot, and have a great weekend.